and welcome back to Voices of Hope Speaker Series. My name is Doris Loeb-Nabel. Kim Bolero invited me to moderate this evening's program because of my involvement in genealogy. I'm a 2G and a member of Voices of Hope. In 1936 or 1937, I'm not sure which, my father had to leave his hometown, sell, in parentheses, the house, lose his business, and move to the Jewish ghetto in Frankfurt. Now, this wasn't a ghetto like the Warsaw ghetto, which was later, but it was still very limited as to what one could do. Then, on November 9, 1938, my father was one of the approximately 30,000 men arrested on Kristallnacht. He spoke about his childhood and adult experiences of anti-Semitism, but not about his arrest and his imprisonment and his experiences. My parents married in March 1939 and were blessed to be able to leave Germany in May 1939, arriving in early June in New York, a few months after my father's relief from Buchenwald. Of course, they were able to leave with some possessions and basically no money. I think it was 5 Deutsche Mark each. My mother said he was haggard and a changed man after his experience and after his release also. I'm an only child and I'm grateful to be alive. 20 years ago, I felt the need to learn about my parents' time in Germany and to learn about their ancestors. My goal to reclaim the lives of my parents' earlier days, their parents, their families. My goal was to reclaim this and memorialize the immediate family members and relatives murdered in the Holocaust, and to learn about and document information about previous generations. 3 years after joining the Jewish Genealogical Society of Connecticut in 2006, I served as publicity chair, and in 2009, created JGSCT's website. From March 2011 to March 2021, I was president of the JGS. I continue to be webmaster and am immediate past president. In addition, I'm now chair of the program committee. I will add some information about JGSCT in the chat section shortly if you're interested. Since 2006, I've attended every International Association of Jewish Genealogical Society, IAJGS, conferences, except in 2018 when I was unable to go. At the conference in 2006, I started a BOF, a Birds of a Feather group. In 2007, we had our first official scheduled meeting, and I have moderated each during every conference, every IAJGS conference. We also now have a page on Facebook. And Jeffrey, I just saw a few minutes ago that you have a Mac. I started the Mac BOF, the Apple product users BOF. So that's how I recognized your computer, because it looks like my computer when you showed your screen. I have an FYI, which is quite interesting and hopefully of interest to you. If you are interested in genealogy or even a bit curious, feel free to contact me. A wonderful option awaits you. In early August, the 41st IAJGS International Conference on Jewish Genealogy, which had been scheduled for Philadelphia, will be instead virtual. Last summer, IAJGS had scheduled to have a conference in San Diego. However, it became the first virtual conference, and it was a huge success. If I remember correctly, 3,300 people attended from around the world. And usually a conference will get several hundred, up to maybe 1,000. I think one was larger than that, but this was an incredible opportunity. And if you're interested or possibly interested in genealogy, this is the way to start, because it's just a wonderful option to see many, many, many programs. Now I'd be pleased to introduce tonight's speaker. I must add that I am rather surprised that I've not met Jeffrey in person, even though I've been at all these conferences, and I just met him shortly before the program started, so now I feel like I know him. After his presentation, we'll have a little time for questions, so be sure to send yours through the chat function at the bottom of the page of the screen, and send it to me, Doris Loeb-Nabel. Thanks for being here tonight. Jeffrey K. Cymbler earned his BA from Yeshiva University and a JD from Boston University School of Law. A child of Holocaust survivors, he's been an avid genealogist and since 1983, I wish I had started then. Jeff is a member of the executive committee and former vice president of the Jewish Genealogical Society, which was the first Jewish Genealogical Society, and it still exists. Now it is the Jewish Genealogical, let me try that again, Jewish Genealogical Society of New York, meaning the 5 boroughs. He was co-chair of the 11th Annual Conference on Jewish Genealogy and program chairman of the 19th Annual Conference on Jewish Genealogy. He was on the editorial boards of both Jewish Roots in Ukraine and Moldova, Pages from the Past and Archival Inventories, and Jewish Roots in Poland, Pages from the Past and Archival Inventories, sorry. Jeff authored chapter 1 of the latter book entitled Introduction to Polish Jewish Genealogical Research. He's also the author of The Cemetery of the Jewish Communities of Benjin, okay, I tried, Engine, yeah, and Shalaj, Poland. Shalaj? I thought that's what I said, okay. Thank you, which was published in Krakow, Poland. Jeff serves on the board of Jewish Records Indexing Poland, JRI Poland, Inc., where he is also a town leader for several shtetls. He has lectured at Jewish genealogy conferences, and his articles have appeared in both Dorot and Avotenu. Jeff says he caught the genealogy bug many years ago and simply cannot rid himself of it. I understand. After his presentation, we'll have a little time. I mentioned that already. So now I welcome, and let's all welcome Jeffrey Cymbler.
Doris, thank you very much for that lovely introduction, and thank you, Voices of Hope, for inviting me this evening, and thank everybody. I see over 100 people who have decided to watch us this evening. Now, I don't claim to be the techie guy, but I'm going to try to make sure I can do this properly by sharing my screen. Bear with me a second. Hold on. Okay. Where is it? No, let's go back here. Bear with me. Got to take my glasses off. Okay, I found that. Now I need to go back. Oh, where's my share screen? Share screen. I'm sorry. Here we go. There we go, I think. You are sharing. Can you see my screen? Can you hear me? Okay. But I don't see my screen, so bear with me a second. Where is my screen? No, that's not what I want. Bear with me. No, close that up. Where's my screen? Here we go. Okay. So I hope you're seeing what I'm seeing, which is the introduction to Polish Jewish genealogy. And for those of you who would like to contact me in the future, please jot down my email, jkcymbler@gmail.com. And let's see if I'm going to do this right. Let's see, go on to the next. Okay, I need to make this play. Sorry for the technical stuff, but stop video, no. How do I get to the next one? Bear with me a second. Somebody want to help me how I get to the next slide? How do I get this to play? Somebody want to unmute themselves?
Jeff, if you go in,
I'm listening.
it looks like, could you just, even if you just scroll down on the right, that might work.
Yeah, okay, is that working?
Yeah, that works.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Let's just do
Okay,
it that way. Yeah, thank
Oh.
you.
okay. All right. So let me first tell you that I have a lot of material to cover, so I'm going to be talking really fast. And what you're seeing now is my illustration of trying to bring to your attention the famous Jewish story of the great sage Hillel, who was asked to explain while standing on one foot all about Judaism. And Hillel responded, what a hateful thing to ask me to do. This is what the Torah, what Judaism teaches you, is that what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. That is the whole Torah. The rest is explanation, and go study it for yourself. So in 45 minutes, I cannot really do justice to the topic of Polish Jewish genealogy, but hopefully I will inspire you all to continue researching and studying your own family trees. Now, let's see if this goes. Oh, okay. Down. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay. So there are many myths about tracing your Polish Jewish roots, such as they never kept any records, all the records were destroyed, the town was wiped off the map, they changed our name in Ellis Island. All of these are myths. They certainly did keep records, better records than actually were kept in America in many cases. Millions of these records still exist. Yes, some of the records were destroyed, but the majority of the records have survived. The towns still exist. The Jews may not be there today, but the towns themselves certainly are there. My 4 grandparents came from 4 different towns in Poland. 2 were from Russian Poland before World War I, and 2 were from Austro-Hungarian Galicia. I've been able to trace all my ancestors back into the mid-1700s. Nobody famous in my family, no rabbis, nobody wealthy. They were just tailors, bakers, klezmer musicians, which is where the name Cymbler comes from, and tavern keepers. But I have found thousands of documents regarding my family, and I'm sure you can do so also, although I've been searching since 1983, as you've been alerted. Now, if I can just get this to go down. Hold on. Let's see. Why doesn't this move down?
Jeff, do you see the gray bar on the side of the screen?
Yes, use
I would
thank
just
you.
use that. Yeah, that's the,
No?
yeah. So just, yeah, there
There
you
you
go.
go. Okay,
There
thank
you
you.
go.
Okay. Okay. So what is Poland? I think it's very important for us to know what it is that we are talking about. My maternal grandmother, my maternal grandmother was born in Galician, Austro-Hungary, in a village outside of a city called Mościska. It was Galicia, it was Austro-Hungary. When she got married in the Second Republic of Poland. And when she passed away in the United States, the country that she was born was Ukraine. Oops, what happened here? It's important for us to understand the map of Poland. What we're looking at now is the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, or what's referred to as the Crown Kingdom of Poland, which existed until 1772. And then what we had were three partitions of Poland by Russia, Austro-Hungary, and Prussia in 1772, 1793, and 1795. After the first partition, this is a map in 1772 that shows the first partition where the first, I'm sorry, I should go back. I'm sorry about that. I wanted to tell you with regard to Poland, going back here, that Poland was 1/3 of Jewish people in the world can trace their ancestry to Poland. In the 19th century, Poland was the world's largest Jewish population. In 1931, 3 million out of 32 million people in Poland were Jewish, or 10% of Poland's population. Jews first settled in Poland in the 7th century, and there were migrations in the 12th and 15th centuries when crusaders in Western Europe brought persecution on the Jews. There were about 750,000 Jews in Poland in 1764 before the partitions. The Jews were allowed to establish their own communal self-governing body, the Council of Four Lands, which existed from the second half of the 16th century until 1764. This self-regulated body took care of all internal Jewish judicial matters, religious and administrative life, and they established charitable institutions. Basically, it was a Jewish self-government within the Polish kingdom. The Polish-Lithuanian kingdom was immensely multicultural throughout its existence. It comprised countless religious identities and ethnic minorities inhabiting the country's vast territory. The most prominent groups were the Poles, Lithuanians, Germans, Ruthenians, and Jews. Prior to the union with Lithuania, the Kingdom of Poland was much more homogeneous. Approximately 70% of the population was Polish and Roman Catholic. With the creation of the Commonwealth, the number of Jews in comparison to the total population decreased to 50%. In 1569, the population stood at 7 million, with roughly 4.5 million Poles, 750,000 Lithuanians, 700,000 Jews, and 2 million Ruthenians. In January of 1573, the Polish Assembly, basically the parliament, signed what was known as the Warsaw Confederation, which was the first act granting religious freedom in Europe. It allowed all persons to worship any faith freely through religious tolerance at any time in Poland. Poland retained religious freedom laws during an era where religious persecution was an everyday occurrence in the rest of Europe. Now, what we're looking at now is the first partition of Poland, which occurred in 1772, where you can see in the red, Russia took the parts referred to as Livonia and Vitebsk and Mogilev from Poland. Prussia took Pomerania, which is shown in the blue, and Austria took Ruthenia, part of Podolia, and the Krakow province, except the city of Krakow, which is shown here in the red. Prior to the partition, there were less than 1,000 Jews in all of Russia. Via the partition in 1772, Russia acquired 60,000 Jews, Austria acquired 60,000 Jews, and Prussia acquired 10,000 Jews from the new Polish territories. Important thing to note here that In 1767, in Galicia, in the Austrian part of Poland, civil record registration, birth, marriages, and death records started to be kept. Now we have the second partition of Poland, 1793. Again, this time Russia took most of Ukraine and Belarus, the provinces of Volhynia, Podolia, and Minsk. Prussia took Gdańsk, Kalisz, Płock, Poznan, and this time around, Austria just sat back and didn't take anything. Important thing to note, after the second partition, civil registration, again, that's the shortened term for birth, marriage, and death records, which is utmost need for a genealogist, began in the Prussian area of former Poland. Okay. What we're looking at now is a sort of a bird's eye view showing you the first, second, and third partitions from what was the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Basically, the three colors on the right, dark bluish, pinkish, oranges, whatever color you're seeing, went to Russia. The green was Galicia. The little yellow West Galicia also went to Austria, and the rest went to Germany. And then what happens after the third partitions, we get what's referred to as the time when Poland was eliminated from the map of Europe. For 123 years, Poland did not exist. So what does that mean for genealogists? It means that if your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents were born before 1918, they were not born in Poland. They were either born in Russia, Austria, or Germany. And after the third partition in Poland, in 1805, the Austrian government mandated that all Jews are required to take last names, surnames, in what's referred to as Western Galicia. Prior to that time, Jews did not have any surnames, no last names. If your father's name was Abraham, you were called Abramovich. In 1807, go back here, Napoleon defeated Prussia and created the Duchy of Warsaw from the former Prussian territory from the second and third partitions. In 1808, then, civil registration began in the Duchy of Warsaw. All records are to be kept in standardized Napoleonic format, named after Napoleon, in the Polish language. All religions are to be registered in the Roman Catholic registry books. In other words, they were mixed. They were not separate ledgers kept. 2 years later, in 1809, Napoleon defeats the Austrians and takes the Austrian territory from the third partition, expanding the Duchy of Warsaw and creating the departments of Krakow, Sandomierz, and Lublin. Napoleon's Duchy of Warsaw lasts only 6 years, 1807 to 1813, but it left behind a legacy of progressive social and economic reforms, including, and most importantly for us, the beginning of civil registration. In 1810, civil registration begins in the former West Galicia, which includes the areas of Kielce, Radom, Lublin, and Siedlce. In 1815, Napoleon is defeated at Waterloo, and the conquering powers met at the Congress of Vienna to divide Napoleon's spoils. The Duchy of Warsaw was split up. The Grand Duchy of Posen was returned to Prussia. Krakow became a free city until 1846 under the auspices of Austria, and the largest part of the area was ceded to Russia and became what we're looking at now, and that is the Kingdom of Poland. And of course, the king was the Tsar of Russia. In 1821, in the Kingdom of Poland, Jews then are required to take surnames per the Russian Tsarist mandate. In 1826, the Kingdom of Poland gets separated separates rather civil registration books for Jews, Roman Catholics, Orthodox, and Protestants. Thus, the borders of Europe are set for the next 100 years until World War I. And basically, this is the map that we deal with until after World War I. So by 1830, this is what is known as Congress Poland, or the Kingdom of Poland. Important thing to know that in Congress Poland, oops, there we go, under the Russian Empire for the period 1825 to 1855, the Tsars decreed that young Jewish males ages 12 to 25 were to be inducted to the army for up to 25 years. Jews, however, in Congress Poland, the area we're looking at now, were exempt from this decree from 1827 to 1843. Why is that important for us? As a result, various strategies were adopted by Jewish people to avoid the recording of the births of their sons. Birth records were then provided to the Tsar, and the Tsar was able to conscript the young boys and also, of course, order taxes to be paid. Because the eldest son was exempt from the draft in Russia, subsequent sons, when people had a second son, quite often the parents assigned them a different last name. So they would also become a first son. Oops, now what happened? I lost it. Oh, God. Yeah. Why did I do that? Let's see. Okay. Hold on. Inbox. Go back. At least it's scrolling. Okay, in 1830, there was an uprising, a Polish uprising against the Tsar. It's referred to as the November Uprising, and also known as the Polish-Russian War of 1830 to 1831, and eventually was crushed. And in the aftermath, Tsar Nicholas I decreed that henceforth the Russian-occupied Poland would lose its autonomy and become an integral part of the Russian Empire. The painting on the right shows the Jewish City Guard, which was a paramilitary force in Poland during the November Uprising. On December 20, 1830, representatives of the Polish Jews demanded that their community be allowed to join the Polish army. The Poles agreed and allowed Jews to join all sorts of military formations, including the Polish Army, Security Division, and the National Guard. However, soldiers and officers of all Polish forces were expected to shave their beards when in uniform, while Jews argued that shaving their beards was against their religion. They also wanted to be brave people for their country. So what happened was, to allow the Jews to serve in the armed forces in accordance with their faith, in February 1831, Jewish city guards were created in each provincial capital of Congress Poland. And by August of 1831, for example, in Warsaw, there were almost 1,100 Jewish soldiers in that guard. So why is the November Uprising so important to us genealogists? Because the uprising brought the Russian soldiers to descend on Congress Poland. And when the Russian soldiers came to these lands to quell the insurrection, they brought with them something else. They brought with them the cholera plague. And hundreds of thousands of people died in the plague throughout Poland in 1830 and 31. So if you find that your ancestor died in 1830 to 31, like my fourth great-grandfather, which I have confirmed, he died in the cholera epidemic. And we are now in a pandemic, so I thought I would add that as a very interesting piece of information. Now, let's see if we get back here. Yes, we go. Then we get this, the January Uprising of 1863. The Poles uprose against the Tsar again. Again, they lost. And here, what we see here is a banner that was created to commemorate the Jews who fought in the 1863 uprising. On the right-hand side, on the bottom, you see Israelite, and it was created by Jewish women in the city of Kalisz. And I know through research that my great-great-great-great-grandfather fought in the uprising. Now, again, why is this important for genealogists? Because as a punishment to the Poles after the uprising, the Tsar decreed that all legal documents now had to be written in Russian Cyrillic script, which makes it a heck of a lot more difficult for Jewish genealogists who can read a little Polish, because at least you know the Latin letters, to read the Russian. Now, 1875, talking about Galicia in Austrian Hungary, Austria divides Galicia into 74 administrative districts. The two principal administrative centers were Krakow in the west, Lvov in the east. Starting at that time, civil registration of the entire administrative region was recorded in the chief town of the district. One ledger was maintained for the district with records for all the towns in the district. Now, in Austro-Hungarian Galicia, according to civil law, only one son in each Jewish family was allowed to marry. In addition, only those couples who possessed between 500 and 1,000 florins and paid 10% of their wealth as a marriage tax could marry. Galician Jews who had less than 500 florins could not even apply for permission to marry. And those with more than 1,000 florins had to pay a higher marriage tax. What was the result? The result was that most Galician Jews were married only in a religious ceremony by the rabbi. The marriages were never recorded nor recognized by the civil authorities. The children of such unions, such as my grandmother, were recorded by the civil authorities as illegitimate, and they were required to adopt their mother's maiden name as their own surname. And frequently what you see is a mother's maiden name was followed by her husband's surname with a listing of the word vel, V-E-L, or the letter V, which means also known as. Finally, to point out, in Galicia, only sons, meaning where there was no other son in the family, single sons, did not have to go into the military. So therefore, what happened quite often is if families had a second son, the second son would adopt the mother's maiden name and therefore try to avoid the draft. Of course, Jews try to avoid the draft in many other ways. What you have now here is a map. Oops, sorry. Showing Poland after World War I on the right, also on the left. Poland regains its independence thanks to the Treaty of Versailles, and record keeping continues in the Polish language. September 1939, Hitler and Stalin divide Poland in half, and most Polish town names change under Germany. For example, Łódź becomes Litzmannstadt, Oświęcim becomes Auschwitz, and in German-occupied Poland, German laws decree that every male be given a middle name of Israel, every female is given the middle name of Sarah to identify them as Jews. And indeed, if you look at the civil registrations for the years 1939 to 1943 in the western part of Poland, you see that practice. And those of you who are asking, what are we talking about, birth, marriage, and death records during the Holocaust in German-occupied Poland? Yes. For example, in my town, until the ghetto was liquidated in August 1, 1943, Jews were getting married, they were having children, and under the law, they were registering those births, they were registering the marriages, and they were registering natural deaths. Of course, all the records were in German. Now, after World War II, Poland was reborn. This time its borders shift westward. The former German city of Breslau, for example, which was never Poland before, becomes Poland. And the Polish city of Lvov, or Lemberg, maybe people have heard, becomes Lvov, a part of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. And when Ukraine is declared its independence in 1992, that city becomes Lviv. Now we shall go to the second part of my slides. Bear with me a second. I got to go back here. Okay. Technical issues. Oops, and we're still there. Chrome. Sorry about that. Okay. And we come here. Nope. Why do we do that? Wrong one. Wrong one. Let's see what happens. Sorry about that. That's where I wanted to go. Let's see. Okay. So let's talk about vital registrations. Except for anybody who descends from rabbinic families, most Jews of Polish descent cannot trace their Polish ancestry further back than the 18th century. Fixed hereditary family names were not customary among Polish Jews until it was required by the civil authorities. 1787 in Galicia, 1808 in Prussia, 1812 in Prussian Silesia, 1830 in Posen, and 1809 in Russia. The family names that existed before those periods tended to be found only in rabbinic families, who were most likely to retain family genealogies. After the partitions of Poland, the three empires that controlled Poland required the church to record Jewish civil vital records and make copies of the church records for the benefit of the state. Eventually, Jews were permitted to maintain their own civil records. In 1808, civil registration began in the Duchy of Warsaw, using the Polish language and the Napoleonic paragraph format of record keeping, a format established by the Napoleonic Code. In a given year, all birth entries are followed by all marriages and finally by all deaths. Birth records provide the date of birth, the father's name, age, occupation, mother's name, age, maiden name, names of witnesses, the house numbers where the person was born. The marriage records state the bride and groom's names, whether they were previously widowed, parents' names, including mother's maiden name. Death records provide the age of the deceased at the time of death, the parents' names or surviving spouses' names, children's names. Prior to 1918, Russia utilized the Julian calendar. Therefore, many records from the former Russian Poland contain two dates on the record, 12 days apart. The first date is the Julian calendar date, and the second date is the Gregorian calendar date, which was used by much of the rest of Europe and what we use today. Julian records in Russian Poland were interdispersed with the Catholic and evangelical records in the same metrical books. Beginning in 1826, the Russian government allowed Jews to maintain their own separate ledgers. After the unsuccessful Polish insurrection in 1863, the Russian government began an intensive program of Russification in all former Polish territories and decreed that all government business had to be conducted in Russian. Consequently, from 1868 to 1918, civil vital records in Congress Poland were recorded in the Russian language. After World War I, with the rebirth of Poland as an independent state, Polish language was restored and record-keeping as the record-keeping language. Important thing to note when you look at marriage records are their references to marriage banns, B-A-N-N-S. Before anyone was married in Russian Poland or Galicia, there had to be 3 public announcements made in the synagogues of both the bride and the groom weeks before the marriage. The purpose of that was to enable anyone to come forward with a legal impediment to the possible marriage, such as a previous marriage which had not been dissolved. Let's first talk about Congress Poland records. Here we have my great-great-grandfather's 1867 birth record. His name was Cymbler, and this is from the city of Żarki, Poland. And what it says on this record, which is in Polish, is that it happened in the city of Żarki on the 31st of December, 12th of January, again, 2 dates, 1866-67, at 9 o'clock in the morning, appeared the Israelite Meyer Cymbler, a tailor, age 28, residing in the city of Żarki, in the presence of the witnesses, the Israelites, Mendel Goldman, a musician, age 60, and Barak Berman, a bookbinder, age 47, residing in the town of Żarki, who showed us the male baby, stating that he was born yesterday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon of his legal wife, Devora Gutschein, now age 29. The child was given the name Herschlich, and this document, it says, was read to the declarant and the witnesses, and then signed by us and them. Next record. This is the marriage record of Hirsch's parents, my great-great-grandparents from 1858, again in Żarki. And it says it happened in the city of Żarki on the 9th, 21st day of June, 1858, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, appeared before me the Israelite Yosek Leiser Janowski, rabbi, together with the Jew Meyer Cymbler, a bachelor, age 19, residing with his parents in Benjin, the son of Levik and Gitlit Cymbler, the Israelite Niska Gutschein, a virgin, age 21, residing with her parents in Benjin, the daughter of Moshka and Bailey Gutschein, and in the presence of the witnesses, the Israelites, Barak Nuremberg, a trader, age 38, and Liza Lazarovich, shoemaker, age 41, both living in Żarki. They declared that before them, that on the 7th/19th day of this month, a religious marriage between Meyer Cymbler and Niska Gutschein was performed, which was preceded by 3 banns on the 5th, 11th, and 24th of May of the current year in the synagogue of Benjin, and the 8th, 15th, and 21st of May of the current year in the synagogue of Żarki. No one opposed the marriage. The document was read to those present and the witnesses, and was signed by the rabbi, the witnesses, the fathers of the groom and the bride, and finally, the groom and the bride. This is working, good. Now, this is the death record of my great-grandfather, Hirsch Cymbler, who died during the Holocaust, but he did not die because of the Holocaust, as far as I know. He died in 1940, and this record, interestingly, it was later in 1940 that these records were then kept in German, but when he died in April, it was still kept in Polish. And it says it happened in the city of Benjin on the first day of April 1940 at 11 o'clock, appeared Mendel Levin, the temporary rabbi of the city of Benjin, note, still a rabbi in Benjin, and resident of Benjin, and the witnesses Elazar Greenbaum, age 64, and Aaron Biauer, age 48, who have positions in the rabbinate, both living in Benjen, and they declared that yesterday at 5 o'clock in Benjen, at Damweg number 3, interesting, they renamed already the street, the German name Damweg, in Polish it was Grobla, and they said that Herschel Cymbler died, who was dependent on his children. He was a retiree, he was dependent on his children. He was the son of Meyer and Dvorah Gutschein, born on the 11th of January, 1867 in Żarki, living in Benjen in the above-mentioned address, leaving his wife, Rosale, maiden name Monschein, and after ascertaining the passing of Herschel, this document was read to those present and signed by us. That actually, what I'm going to do is probably skip ahead because we're running out of time. And I want to show you now Galician Polish Jewish records, which are very different. As opposed to the Napoleonic format, which were paragraph forms, legal forms were just the variables changed. In Galicia, everything was kept in this columnar format with columnar headings. Depending upon the time period, they could be in Polish and German or just in German, and again, where it is. And what you're looking at here, if you see my cursor going around here, the name there is Mincia, M-I-N-C-I-A. That was my grandmother. And what you're looking at is the birth register from 1903 from Mościska. And I'm going to read to you the column headings and what's listed for my grandmother here. So the first column heading is the record number. The second is the birth date and birthplace for my grandmother, January 3, 1903 in Szczeniec, house number 286. Third column, circumcision date or date of naming and place. So it says again, January 3, 1903. Before I prepared for this presentation, I was curious. I knew she wasn't obviously circumcised, but I was curious to see she was named the same date that she was born. And yes, indeed, she was born on Shabbos. And traditionally on the Sabbath, that's when fathers give their daughters a name. So she was given her name the same day she was born. Her name was Mincia, sex female. Column 6, name of father, occupation, and place of residence. Column 6 is left blank. And the reason why column 6, the father, is left blank is because her parents were not married under civil law. Next column, 7, name of mother, name of her parents. Her mother was Hannah Klugman. And then it says ritually married, meaning religiously, to Koppelberg, my great-grandfather, Mincia's father, a trader from Szczeniec, daughter of Chaim Klugman, a trader, and Ruchel Goldfarb from Balice. And the column 8 were the witnesses or the sandak. The sandak is the man who holds the baby at the circumcision. And what's listed is the witness who came to record. Obviously, my great-grandmother did not come shortly after having the baby to announce that she had a baby to the authorities. So the witness was my great-grandfather's father, my great-great-grandfather, Avram Hirsch Berg, a trader from Łódzka-Wola, who was the grandfather of Mincia Berg. And then finally, it lists the name of the midwife. In this case, it was Rosalie Pirig, was the midwife who delivered my grandmother. Here we have now my grandparents' marriage record from 1930. From Poland, from free and independent Poland. And what you have here is Meyer, again, on the left here, Meyer Nadel, born in November 29, 1901, in Rokitnica, in the county of Jarosław, a merchant in Jarosław, the son of Ozias. Ozias was the official name that in Austro-Hungary, you couldn't just name your kid Shmuel or Yankel. You had to give them official names. So Ozias was the official name for Yehoshua or Joshua Nadel. And Rachel, maiden name Rosenberg of Jarosław, They were married on August 12, 1930 in Shenitz. The bride's name was Minsha Klugman. Again, her maiden name is used, not her real last name. And it says that she was never before married, born January 3, 1903 in Shenitz, daughter of Chani Klugman, wife of Koppelberg from Shenitz. And the rabbi was Rabbi Leibish Rosenfeld, the rabbi of Moshchiska, who performed the ceremony. And it lists the witnesses. And it also tells you that there were bans, announcements in the synagogues of Pruchnik and Moshchiska. And one important thing, and I never really stared at this that carefully until 2 days ago when I wanted to translate this for everybody. But in the last column, which are the notations, there is a notation which I've had translated. And this tells me that I knew my grandfather, Meyer Nadel, was in the Polish army, but I didn't know where he was stationed or exactly when. And this tells me that my grandfather was in the Polish army in 1925, and he was recorded as such in the official military records of 1925. This is an important thing because I'll tell everybody, I'm very happy that as of 3 weeks ago, I am now a Polish citizen. I applied for and obtained Polish citizenship by birth, born in New York, through my father. My mother's birth certificate, her year, the books are missing. But this document shows that my grandfather clearly was in the Polish army. And theoretically, I could have used this to claim Polish citizenship through my mother's father. Okay? Now, briefly, I want to go through, there's the marriage record. Very important thing, jot this down. The 3 most important internet sites for Polish Jewish genealogy. Jewish Record Indexing Poland, www.jripoland.org, which, by the way, I'm a member of the board of directors. But it is the first place to go for Jewish genealogy in Poland. Then you have the website for Jewish genealogy in general, and that is JewishGen, www.jewishgen.org. And finally, if your family is from Galicia, www.geshergalicia.org. Now, we're not going to have time for me to get into, I think, getting into these websites. They have, let me just tell you that JRI Poland, which is a not-for-profit organization, has indexed and extracted over 6 million birth, marriage, and death records throughout Poland, over 6 million such records. When you go to the website, you will see their instructional material of how to search about the website, searching by town, searching by name. JewishGen has tons of databases. They have a general database. You can just type your name in, and it's amazing what you'll find. They have a Holocaust database. They have a family finder where people like myself have registered themselves. I am searching all Cymblers or anybody from Benjamin. You want to start out the right way. You know where your family comes from. Contact people who are also researching the same town. They have had 30-odd years of experience like I have and will be a great resource. And by the way, almost all Jewish genealogists love helping other people, especially people from their towns. They have on JewishGen a Yiska book project, translating memorial books that were published after the war in Hebrew and in Yiddish, where you can again search by name. As I said, they have a tremendous Holocaust database. Gesher Galicia, which is specifically for Galicia. If your family's from there, search both places. Search both JRI Poland and Gesher Galicia. They don't usually overlap in terms of records. They have an amazing database, and again, you can find people from all those towns. Finally, and I'll just finish, most important thing, I'm hooked on Facebook, and there are 4 major Facebook pages for Jewish genealogy. If you want to jot down, you'll be able to find them. The first is called Jewish Genealogy, Poland. Jewish Genealogy, Poland. Next, Jewish Genealogy Portal, Portal. Then there's a one that's just called Jewish Genealogy. And the final one, which is the biggest, is called Tracing the Tribe. Tracing the Tribe Jewish Genealogy on Facebook, where, of course, you'll have people whose families come from Turkey and elsewhere. Join all those Facebook pages. Everyone who's on Facebook wants to help someone else. And with that, I think I'm finished. I'm sorry I went over time and sorry for the technical problems.
No, it was wonderful. Thank you. We will turn it over, Doris.
Doris, you're on mute. You're on mute, Doris. Somebody has to unmute her. I have to unmute you. Let's see.
No, she should be able to unmute herself.
Ask to unmute.
See, yep, I'm here.
Okay.
Okay, great. I'm going to start in the order that they were presented. And Kim, how much time do we have?
We do have a little time. I think we have time for a few questions. We did start a little about 5 minutes later than we planned, so
and maybe
yes,
Jeff can answer quickly. First question is, did you say, Jeff, that if people emailed you, you'd send us the presentation? I don't remember hearing that, but I might.
I can do that, but people can email me specific questions. I don't know. We have like 100 some odd people online. Please don't give it out to all your friends and neighbors, but yeah.
Jeff, I'm sorry, this is Robin. If everybody does not need to email Jeff for the presentation, you can email me and I will get everyone what they would like.
Great.
Okay. Second question, Jeff already answered part of it about the genealogical research within the areas that he's spoken about. The other question is, what is worth paying for genealogical research? Is there a program to organize? What do you recommend?
To organize, I don't think you need to pay for a program. I mean, some people,
okay. I'm sorry. Let me clarify.
Yeah.
I was trying to read too fast. What is the best website or websites to begin a genealogical search? You've already mentioned some of them. I don't know if this woman is referring to for her own records, like a database, an app.
Well, two things I'll just say. You know, when I started doing genealogy back in 1983, I had graph paper, which I scotch taped together, and I was very neatly creating my family tree that way. People don't do that anymore. Either you purchase a software program, and I'm not going to recommend one. You can go on to any of these Facebook pages and ask for recommendations, pluses and minuses. But I think most people today put their family trees on the internet, on the web, because it has lots of advantages. And the big ones are Ancestry, Geni, G-E-N-I, Geni, and MyHeritage. And each one has pluses and minuses. The big plus on doing it is when you put your family tree and you're putting it on the web, on any of those programs, as you're putting the name of your great-grandfather on the tree, lo and behold, you get some pop-up from that program telling you, we have a match. Somebody else is researching that name, or we have a document about that person. And you can go and look at that and say, oh, yeah, that's my great-grandfather. Who is that? Holy, I didn't know. There's a whole branch, and you can contact that person, and you can work with that person to create a big tree, or you can find a picture of a tombstone, or a birth record, or a death record, and personally, I use MyHeritage, but part of my tree is on Jenny because I have a cousin who's done that. And they all have pluses and minuses. And I don't want to tell you which is better than the other.
Okay. There's a rather involved question here from a person asking about family from Prussian Poland, Posen area. And she can't find records for the area for the time period from 1850 to 1870. She hasn't found any, wonders if they exist and if she should contact Germany or Poland.
I am honestly not the expert on Prussian Poland, and usually the audience has very few people. I'm happy that somebody's on there. There's a gentleman whose name is Roger Lustig. Roger Lustig is the expert on this area. Roger is also one of the moderators of
the German Research Division. It used to be JERSIG.
Yes, but he's also the moderator of Jewish genealogy or Tracing the Tribe. I think Tracing the Tribe, he's also a moderator. Yeah. But whoever is asking me this question, this specific question, send me an email and I will get you an answer. Okay?
All righty. Next, are the types of documents available still, and how does one go about getting a copy?
Okay. So all these records exist. Basically, under Polish law, birth records that are less than 100 years old are covered by Polish privacy laws. So that means you cannot get a record of someone unless you can prove that you are really related to that person, like your father. The only way to get it would either be to go to Poland or hire a researcher. It is really at the whim of the town clerk. You may have to give a power of attorney. Records, I'll go talk about records that are over 100 years old, birth records, death records that are over 80 years old. Basically, they go into the archives, regional archives. And depending upon, we're talking about Galicia or Russian Poland, the Polish State Archives is in the process of scanning all of these records. And depending upon your town, when you go to JRI Poland and research your family and you find a hit, meaning your great-grandfather's birth record, there may be a scan of that record there. Others have not yet been scanned. For every town covered by JRI Poland, send an email to the name of the town. For example, if your town is Lodz, send an email to lodge@jri-poland.org. And the town leader will be able to give you a lot more information specifically about that town. And I must emphasize, not all records that JRI Poland has indexed are online. They are not all online. So if you can't find something, if years you're looking for are not there, send an email to krakow@jripoland.com, bialystok@jripoland.com, and the town leader will get back to you.
Okay. One more question from this person. There are often photos of prisoners in Auschwitz posted on different Facebook groups. Were photographs taken of every prisoner? And if so, how does one get a copy?
I've been posting those on my Facebook page. By the way, I run a Facebook page called the Benjamin Sosnowiec Zawiercie Area Research Society. The answer to that is by the time most of the Jews, by the time actually the final solution started, which was in the middle of 1942, they stopped photographing the prisoners. Those photos that you see, most of the photos that were done were of prisoners, and they were Polish prisoners. There are Jewish prisoners, but those Jews among those photos were sent to Auschwitz not because they were Jewish. They were sent to Auschwitz as political prisoners. And all those photos, if you go to the Auschwitz Museum website, you can search and you can find those photos. But by and large, of the 1.1 million Jews who went to Auschwitz-Birkenau, maybe I don't even know if there are 1,000, frankly, photos of Jews.
Next question. My question is if you have any connections to translators to help read records that we find.
The answer is you don't need them. In addition to there being guides online and a couple of books you can buy, the best with regard to Polish language records is a book published by Judith Frazin, F-R-A-Z-I-N, called A Translation Guide to 19th Century Polish Records, or something like that. You can do it on by your own, but again, Facebook is wonderful. What people do today is they go to a Facebook page called Genealogy Translations. Am I right, Doris? I think that's the name of it.
There are several. All you have to do is search for genealogy translations. And
Genealogy there's one. So that's a big one. You become a member, you post, and there are people dying to translate. Otherwise, people also post these things on the other Facebook genealogy websites, and people love to volunteer. So you don't need to hire anybody.
Translating gravestones also is a big.
All of these.
And others.
Yeah. Oh, people are dying to, pardon the pun, dying to translate gravestones. Yes.
I'm trying to aggregate some of these. Did many pre-war records from Warsaw survive?
The answer is unfortunately no. Warsaw is the one unfortunate part of the history. Warsaw was bombed to smithereens, if you've ever seen a picture of Warsaw after the war. And unfortunately, most of the records were destroyed. There are certain types of records. Again, if you go on to Genealogy Poland and contact Hadassah Lipsius, who is the expert on Warsaw, certain things exist. Marriage bans, of course, the cemetery has been almost all indexed by now, the Okopoka Cemetery. But also Warsaw, like Paris, by the way, the records were divided by districts. You need to know which district somebody lived in, by the way.
How can we go about finding an ancestor that changed his name or her name when coming to America?
Okay, it's not a question about Polish genealogy, it's a genealogy question. You always work backwards in genealogy. So you start to get your parents or your grandparents or your great-grandparents petitions for naturalization and declarations of intention. That is not the certificate that you may have with their nice photograph on it. These are documents that were filed either with the state court or the federal court. And in those documents, they may indicate what their original name was and where they came from. Another thing to be searching are Ellis Island records, because if there was a change, it did not happen when they hit the dock. And the Ellis Island records, by the way, were not created at Ellis Island. The actual ship manifests were created in Germany, Holland, and France at the time your ancestor left the country. So those are places to look. And of course, spellings certainly change. I didn't have a time to get into it, but if your relative was named Goldstein from Poland, it's not Goldstein. You're never going to find it that way. It's Sztajan. And what you're going to have to learn is how to write names in Polish. Of course, Russian is another big problem.
Okay, most of the ones are replicating each other, but I do have one more that I don't know if you can answer. If I only know my grandparents as Sarah and Israel, and I know their last name. How would I find their real first names? Or could these be their real first names? They lived in Galicia.
If the names were Sarah and Israel, most likely they're 100%. I would guess the Hebrew name was Sarah, and Yisrael. Now in Galicia, it would be Israel, IZR, or some spelling of that sort. To find out for certain, again, you want to find the petition for naturalization, the declaration of intention, find out where they came from, and find the birth records, the marriage records, find the record, the ship record. If their name was Irving or Harry, they didn't come on the ship with those names.
Okay, and I think we need to end at this point because other people, if they have a specific question, they can send it to Robin and she will forward it to you or forward them to you. Okay, so what I'd like to do now is, first of all, thank Jeffrey for his excellent and interesting presentation, informative presentation. And thanks to everyone in our audience for your engagement and excellent questions. If you like tonight's program and want to see more from us, consider making a donation at www.ctvoicesofhope.org or use our text to give number, and you can find us on Venmo. All the ways to donate are actually listed in the chat box. And before we end, some more Voices of Hope information. On Tuesday, May 4, we are welcoming Ariel Berger, author of Witness Lessons from Elie Wiesel's Classroom. Ariel served as Wiesel's teaching assistant and will be speaking with us about this experience as well as Wiesel's legacy and its implications for today. This will be another remarkable conversation, so be sure to register at the link in the chat. All of our upcoming speakers are listed on our website at www.ctvoicesofhope.org. And while you're there, check out all the Voices of Hope educational and commemorative programs and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for the latest updates and more. Kathy is going to launch a poll now, and it's a quick survey that should be up on your screen. And this is completely optional, but we hope that you will leave us some information and feedback about our virtual programming and what you would like to see from us in the future. So thank you again. And just before I say good night, I'm going to remind you that if you ask me for information or my email address or information about the Jewish Genealogical Society, or if for IAJGS's information, it is in the chat. I added it there. So after you end the poll, have a great night.
Thank you so much, everyone. And thank you, Doris, and thank you, Jeffrey. Also, just so a lot of people were sending me notes, there will be a recording of tonight's program up in the next couple of days. We will make sure everybody has the link. It will be on YouTube. I will also send out, Jeffrey, if you share your notes with me, I can send out the notes to everybody who was here tonight. And finally, in the chat, I rewrote Jeffrey's email as well. So this was really wonderful. Thank you so much for so much wonderful and important information.
Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.